Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 2 of our 5-part Unstable full set review, where today we're going to look at the faction Agents of S.N.E.A.K. Now, unlike a normal set review where we usually go color by order, this is an unset, so we're going to mix it up a little bit. This is going to be an unreview as we look at factions this time. Now, just real quick, if you saw yesterday's video, you know what to expect here. We're going to look at all of the cards that have the watermarks for this particular faction. We're also going to look at all the blue cards that do not have any watermarks today and combine those in here as well. But this is unusual. I mean, this is not a normal competitive set. We are going to talk about some competitive strategies when it comes to draft and sealed. But for the most part, we're just going to enjoy the card. Enjoy the flavor, enjoy kind of the quirkiness, what they're doing here. Now, just real fast before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support us. Patreon's down there. If you want to pre-order Unstable or really anything else, check out our Amazon links or the Flipside Gaming links. Both of those are ways to support what we do here. All right, with that being said, let's get into it. We're going to start off with Clocknapper. This card's super unique, right? This is a really cool rare. We never have seen anything like this before that I can think of in Magic, and stealing an opponent's phase is actually pretty awesome, right? So look at it this way. Most of the time, I think you're going to take the beginning phase because that steals their untap, upkeep, draw a card. So imagine playing this for 5 mana. You get a 2/2 creature. You draw a card. You get to untap your stuff and you get an upkeep, which can be really relevant depending on what's going on with your contraptions at the time. Not to mention on the other side of the table with your opponent's contraptions. And you're taking your opponent off a card draw, off an untap step, off an upkeep. So that's actually a huge play for 5 mana. Now, are there times where another phase might make sense? Absolutely. There's going to be game states where it's going to make sense to steal something else, sure. But most of the time, even if you just did that, you're getting your value for 5 mana here. This is actually super sweet. Crowstorm. Okay, this is probably a lot of people's favorite card of the set, and this card cracks me up for so many reasons. I mean, obviously the reference to Stormcrow, and it's really funny that a number of Stormcrows is actually pretty good. So this card actually feels pretty solid to me. First off, it has the Storm mechanic, which is kind of nice to see because we're probably never going to see that like in a standard set again. So whenever they can work some Storm in, I think that's sweet. And secondly, yeah, you know what? Getting a bunch of 1/2 blue bird tokens with flying is actually pretty good. Even if it's just like 2 or 3 for 3 mana, that's really good. So this card seems like it could be super sweet for you in limited. Defective Detective. Okay, I like this card as a common. There's some really good, strong commons in this set altogether. What I love about this is a 2/1 that can't be blocked for 3. That alone, sign me up. Now, that ability is also relevant, of course. When it enters the battlefield, a person outside the game can look at your opponent's hand, choose a card from it, and they have to reveal it. So you get a little information, and depending on what that person decides to do, whether they want to make that opponent show something that matters or not, well, maybe there's a level of variance there, but at the end of the day, who cares? Because I have a 2/1 that can't be blocked, and there's a lot of really good abilities that are going to combo with this card. You're going to see that, especially when we get into the contraptions. Contraptions can put abilities onto cards that will do something when you connect with an opponent. This is a great vehicle for those abilities. 5-finger discount. All right, so this one is actually kind of sweet because it lets you take a target non-land permanent. Now, here's the deal, though. This is kind of like Control Magic in a way, but it can take non-land permanent, which is sweet. But you're paying for it. I mean, it costs 6 to get it into your hand, and then you have to play the casting cost of the card, too. Now, you can use your resources for really any resources it takes to cast the card, which is kind of nice, so it doesn't just get stuck in your hands. It doesn't make you have to think about what you're going to take. You can cast anything. Now, one thing I do want to point out, which is a little odd, and you're not going to see this just on this card. There's more cards that do this. But typically in Magic, you don't put your opponent's cards in your hands. That's just something they never do. They're doing it in this set, which is interesting. I do think that's a little dangerous. You want to be careful not to accidentally take someone's card and then have an illegal deck or something in the next game, or vice versa. So, yeah, it's an extra thing to keep track of. I don't know if I like that, but I do think it's quirky and a fun mechanic. You just have to be careful and keep track of it. But yes, I can steal something. Sometimes that's just a tempo play to take it off the board, and that might be enough. And then I can cast it and take it. It's a slow, roundabout way to get there, but it does get there. Graveyard Busybody. Okay, this card's actually super sweet, and one of many cards that we're going to talk about that feels like it could be really good in a multiplayer game. And yes, Commander games, technically, silver border cards are not legal, But a lot of play groups do allow players to play with at least certain ones, and it feels like this set is bringing a lot of cards to the table that you may want to actually play in multiplayer games like Commander, or maybe just like a multiplayer cube or something like that. But regardless, this particular card, really interesting. All graveyards are also your graveyards now. Anytime you interact with typically your graveyard, it is now open to any of the graveyards. That's actually pretty cool for like reanimation type spells. There's going to be some spells you're going to see in the set that do play well with this. There's actually a card we're going to look at tomorrow that combos in a very interesting way with this card. So there's a lot going on here, and the power and toughness is going to be based on the number of cards with flavor text in your graveyards. So that could be interesting too, depending on how many graveyards are actually in play at any given time if you're playing a multiplayer game. So again, even in a 2-player game, that could be okay. It probably won't be a very sizable creature, at least early on, but maybe later in the game it could have some heft to it. So that's actually pretty interesting, and one of many cards, too, that will also refer to flavor text. Magic Word. Okay, this is kind of like a claustrophobia effect with a little fun twist on it. You pay 3 for it, you enchant the creature, and create a magic word, and then whenever you whisper the magic word, it taps the creature. So basically, you're just keeping the creature tapped. So you're just having a fun way to do it. Really good card at common. I mean, basically, this is your blue removal type card. More or less. This is sweet too. Another card I want to play with black border cards. Like I see this and I think of all the crazy possibilities. There's great things you can do within the unset, don't worry. And within unstable, plenty of stuff to do. Especially all the die rolls going on. Like you can manipulate stuff that say, if you roll X, Y, or Z, you can change that number a little bit. So that's actually pretty cool. But there's also so many other crazy things you can do with this card. Like if it says get 2 tokens, you can get 3, right? Like just all that type of manipulation. You can use it against your opponent at certain times. You can use it to promote your stuff and make it better. It's just super versatile. It's super cheap. It's a surprise at instant speed for 1 blue. And I want to play this in black border. I just really, really do. The card seems awesome. And I love the flavor text. Why was 5 afraid of 6? Because 6, 7, 8. All right, Novela Mental. Now, this one's kind of funny to me because this is a card we've seen a million times, right? Like blue 1, 2/1 flying, can only block creatures with flying. Good card and limited, like happy to play these. But what makes it an uncard is the name, the art, the text, the flavor text. So yeah, it's cool. It's a nice twist on things. But it also reminds you too, it grounds you a little bit and says, you know what? This is still a Magic set. Like you're still sitting down to play a game of Magic and you're going to need this card sometimes. Sneak Dispatcher. This card has a nice power level behind it too. And this is uncommon. Like this feels like it could have been rare to me. Now, here's what's cool about this card. We're seeing a lot of really powerful creatures with powerful abilities with low toughness. So I guess the idea is hopefully they won't last too long. But if your opponent can't answer this, they're in trouble. Because you can look at the top card of target player's library. So that's you, opponent, whoever, right? And then when you look at that card, if it happens to have the sneak watermark, you can reveal it and put it into your hand. And if it doesn't, you basically are scrying. You either keep it on top or put it on the bottom. Now, this is extremely powerful because you can look at it one of 2 ways. You do it to yourself, and maybe you draft a lot of sneak cards. It works as a card draw ability some of the time. The times that it doesn't, it is a scry. That's still really good. Or you have the flexibility of going to your opponent. If your opponent happens to have a sneak watermark card, well, wonderful. You just stole it, went into your hand, which we talked about earlier. Or you get to basically kind of fate seal them in a way where it's like, okay, I want you to have this card, I'll keep it on top, or I don't want you to have this card, it's going to the bottom. And that can really start to shut them down too in what they're trying to do in their strategy. So there's a lot going on. This card feels really simple, and there's so many cards in the set where you glance at them and you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of a funny, quirky, weird thing on set. Then you think about it for a second, you're like, wait a minute, this is really strong. And if I were to play this in a black bordered game, like this would be awesome. So yeah, really, really cool design here. Spell Suck. Okay, well, it's a counter spell. Like there's not a lot to say about this one. Basically, this again feels like a normal card. Like this is the counter spell that costs like 1 more, but then it lets you do like the big mechanic of the set. That's what this is. So I get to assemble a contraption and I counter spell. Pretty cool, good and limited. Would I rather have cheaper counter spells and not assemble the contraption? Sure, of course. Control decks want cheaper counter spells, but this is just fine. Spy Eye, another very unusual card that's taking cards from your opponent's deck, putting them into your hand at times. Unlike the card we saw a few moments ago, though, you have to cast the cards that you're taking with the actual mana. It's not a way to change your resources or use your resources towards other colors. So, okay, that's fine, because if I can hit enough, I'll probably be stealing my opponent's lands too. And okay, then I'll eventually be able to cast some of these cards, but I do have to hit a few times probably for that to occur, which may or may not be able to happen with a 1/3 flyer. Just depends on board state, right? Worst case scenario, you're just taking the card off your opponent and you're keeping it in your hands, and sometimes that could be fine too, depending on what you're actually pulling, right? This also works really well with a lot of the contraptions we're going to see in a few moments, so there are times where you'll play this. There's probably times where you'll skip this card. We've seen cards actually kind of similar to this before. Typically, though, the card doesn't go to your hand, of course. It goes into like an exile zone. But yeah, these cards can be good. You just have to get them across. Suspicious Nanny. Okay, this one's actually kind of cool. 3/4, so it's got some heft to it. Costs 5, but if you can connect with this one, you get to steal a contraption. So again, it's all about connecting with these creatures and getting these special abilities. There's a contraption we're going to see in a few moments that helps you get there too, so that's very important. Now, this card being 3/4, your opponent's going to have to kind of deal with it. It does cost 5, so by the time it comes out, sometimes it'll be outclassed on the battlefield and it might be hard to get across, but if you can find a way to do the damage, this could be pretty good for you. Time Out. This is a really sweet card, actually, at instant speed. Great tempo play. Even if you roll a 1, I think the value's still here for 5 mana, because taking a non-land permanent off the board, even if it's just for a couple turns, could be really good, and actually sometimes can even win you the game. Just depends on board state, right, and what's going on. There's other times if you're really far behind, it's not going to help that much. But there are times, especially like a stalemate or something like that, where everything's just kind of clogged up, you could be in a really good position after you play this. If you roll a 6, wonderful, but you know what? You can roll a 1 and actually still feel like you got your value's worth here. It just feels like a really good tempo play. Also important to remember that you can use this on one of your own permanents too if you need to protect it in a pinch. Very Cryptic Command. I love this card. The art is amazing on this. I think the art is actually maybe my favorite of the set, or one of my favorite pieces. Really looks cool. And what makes Cryptic Command powerful? Well, a couple things. One is the versatility, all the different modes. The other thing is the modes that they have on Cryptic are just so powerful for control decks that the card is just insane. So how does this compare? Well, I won't say the power level of these choices is as good as Cryptic, because they're not. But they're not bad, and the versatility is actually pretty good. And again, I have a card on my hands that makes me really want to play this in like Commander or something like that. I mean, your choices here: untap 2 target permanents, tap each permanent target player controls with exactly 1 word in the name. Okay, that feels a little quirky. That makes it an uncard, I guess. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. All of these are good. I mean, a lot of times you might just be untapping a couple things and then returning a instant or sorcery to hand. Like that alone, I think, is worth the price of admission here. So the versatility of this card is super sweet. I like the fact that they just kind of tweaked that one little part of that 1 to make it feel like an uncard, but really this feels like it could be in a normal set. Finders, Keepers. Speaking of cards that just kind of fit into normal sets, this is our first black card, and yeah, you know what? It's one of those kind of expensive black removal spells at sorcery speed that also does the thing the set wants you to do. So here you go. Black and 5, destroy creature, assemble a contraption. Not a lot to say about it, but it's going to be a very good card for you. Removal's great. This is a common. You'll be able to find them in drafts and such. And as we move through the black cards too, just a reminder, today we're just going to look at the black cards that have the Sneak watermark on them. Masterful Ninja. Okay, so this is one of my favorite cards because I just think it's really awesome design. First off, the art, maybe my favorite part of the card, and the fact that it's a troll ninja. So you look at the art, you don't see the ninja, right? Because the ninja is that masterful, and they're trolling you a little bit because, yeah, you can't find the ninja in the art. So it's a troll ninja. Now, the card itself, the first time I read this, I didn't quite wrap my head completely around it, but the more I kind of read it and also read Rosewater's explanation of the card, it makes sense. When I first read it, I thought that if I had it in my hands and I also have it on the battlefield, that if it like dies on the battlefield, that it's still in my hand, but that's not the case. Rosewater clarified that a little bit. So that makes the card maybe a little less powerful than at first glance, but still feels pretty good, especially later in the game when you have a lot of mana to invest into it. Early in the game, it's not doing a whole lot for you, but if it does die on the battlefield, yes, it does leave your hands, so keep that in mind. Or if it gets discarded, then of course it goes away too, so there's a few ways to get rid of it sometimes. But yeah, if I have the mana, just a nice haste creature that can come out, and it has that protection from sorcery speed removal. So during the opponent's turns, it goes away, basically. It's still in my hand, it's not on the battlefield, and that can be a powerful mechanic, especially if you have the mana to pump it. Also to remember, this could be a good surprise blocker. Okay, it will only work once, but you can use that reveal ability at any time. It doesn't have to be on your turn. It can be on an opponent's turn. Overt Operative. Okay, this is a Menace card. Another light theme you're going to see here. Menace is another evasion. We see flying, we see Menace, we see an unblockable creature. This is all about getting that damage across and getting special abilities when you get the damage across, and also kind of manipulating the game a little bit. That's what S.N.E.A.K's all about. This card fits right into that. Also, some of these cards we're going to see today are also riggers, which does matter. We're going to see why in another couple days as we get into more of the different cards. But for right now, yeah, this card, perfect. It has Menace, and also if you can hit a player with it, you get to assemble a contraption. Not bad for 4 mana, 2/3. Really good card, actually, at uncommon. Sly Spy. This one's interesting. Like, I don't know if this always makes my build. Like a 2/2 for 3. It has to deal combat damage to a player, and if it does, they do reveal their hand, so you get information, and you get to choose the card with the longest name, and then that player will discard that card. So it's not quite random discard, but it's also not your opponent choosing completely either. But they can play around this a little bit because this really telegraphs itself, right? You have to play it, untap with it, then get cross with it for 2 damage, and then, okay, maybe your opponent didn't have time to react and get the card out of their hand they want out of their hand, right? You know, so it's not going to put up amazing results, but again, in conjunction with some of the contraptions, it could get better. Subcontract. Okay, this one's interesting. Kind of a weird take on like a Thoughtseize ability or almost like a Duress ability, but here's the problem with it is the person you select outside the game, I mean, they might help you, they might not. But really where the disconnect here for me is you don't get the information. They see the cards, you don't. I mean, they could tell you what's in their hand, but are they telling you the truth? Who knows? So that is kind of weird to me in just a high variance way, but it's also super fun. Like, this feels like a really fun card to play. That's why it's here. Now, if you're super spiky competitive at your draft or something, you're probably going to skip this a lot of the time because it is high variance. You might have better things you can do that are more consistent. But yeah, at the same time, it's just fun. I'm glad it's here. All right, let's look at some multicolor cards with Phoebe, head of S.N.E.A.K. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I just feel like there's so many cards I just want to play in Commander, and they did a great job of creating some legendary creatures that feel like awesome commanders. This is one of them. She doesn't cost that much, 2/3. Can't be blocked by creatures with flavor text, so again, flavor text coming into the game a little bit again. And this one's interesting, that activated ability permanently stealing target creature's text box that also steals the flavor text, so that means a creature that might not have been able to block before can now block. Keep that in mind. But also, too, you can start adding all these different abilities and powers to this card as you pump more mana into that ability. Seems pretty sweet to me, actually. I really want to try this out like a big multiplayer game. I think it could have some really cool things happen, really cool interactions. So awesome design here. X. Okay, this is another legendary creature. It could be a commander if your playgroup allows it. Now, this one, you have to read the rules, I think, a couple times to really wrap your head around. It costs a black and a blue. Once you get on the battlefield, if you can untap with it, though, that's where it's really going to shine. You pay another black and blue, tap, you put it in an opponent's hand. Once it's in the opponent's hand, it kind of acts like a spy, sort of, and it allows you to go into their hand for the ability cost of a black, blue, and 3, and play one of their cards without paying the mana cost. So you get to basically start playing their cards. Can they work around this a little bit? Sure, they're going to be able to work around it a little bit, try to beat you to playing the cards that matter. And sometimes it might not always pay off for you, but other times, especially if they stumble on mana and you can outrun them resource-wise, you could really be closing out a game with a card like this. So it feels really sweet, just really unique. Again, just a lot of fun. Again, it is a mechanic where a card's going into someone else's hand. Kind of odd, but kind of works too at the same time. Split Screen. Okay, this is the lone artifact that has the watermark for Agents of S.N.E.A.K, but it's a good one. And this is another one of those cards on the surface is like, haha, funny, wacky, unset. And then wait a minute, this is like really good, right? Like your library, you divide it into 4 piles. Reveal the top card of each pile. Then whenever you draw, you get to choose which one you're drawing from. Yes, sign me up. Yes, I'm giving away a little information and that isn't cool, but I can get past that considering I'm getting this kind of card draw selection. What if the card said, look at the top 4, reveal the top 4 cards of your library every time you go to draw a card, and then choose one of those cards to put in your hand? That would be amazing, right? This is basically the same thing. So yeah, this is for 4 mana. Feels really awesome. Again, I want to play this like in Commander, especially with like a larger deck. I feel like that could be really fun. All right, let's look at the 9 contraptions that go along with this particular faction. We'll start off with accessories to murder, and this one is a simple one. It's an uncommon, but when you crank it, target creature gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So there's some benefit to having maybe some small creatures or tokens. We're going to see that linked into some of these other contraptions in just a few moments. This one's a little high variance because there's times where you might still not have a good attack, and then it's just not really doing anything. But there's other times where you'll have a great attack. Like what if you have one of those unblockable creatures or a menace creature that you can buy or something like that. Then yeah, this becomes pretty good for you then. Deadly Poison Sampler. Now, I mentioned earlier that these contraptions would bring about some more abilities that can be tacked onto things that can get across for damage. This is a very good one at rare. This time, if the creature can get across for damage, destroy target creature that player controls, that's very powerful. So I really like this again with some of these high evasion creatures that we've been seeing. Fantastic. Also should point out with these contraptions, you can target any creature. Occasionally it will matter. Dictation Quillograph. Well, I like looting. This one adds looting when the creature connects. So imagine playing some of these in conjunction with each other, right? Like if you can get a creature across, there could be some crazy abilities going off. This is a sweet one for common. Dispatch Dispensary. This is a vehicle, hopefully, to maybe get some of these other abilities across by giving you a 2/2 Black Rogue creature token with Menace. So that's actually pretty sweet. Fairy Airy. This one's the mythic, and this one's actually really sweet because it creates a couple tokens till end of turn. You do have to sacrifice them at the end step, but okay, that's fine. Flying, haste, and on top of that, whenever the creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So there's a lot going on here, and these can just crash in because they're going away anyway at the end of turn, so like, why not? Now, on top of that, again, imagine trying to pile on a few more of these abilities, a few other contraptions. This could be really good, and we just saw a few moments ago even a card where number of creatures matters. So this will go along with that too. And remember, when these go off, if they go off all at the same time, you can stack the abilities, get them out in the right order, could have a really big play. Hypnotic Swirly Disc. Okay, this one's a rare. This is one of the few mill cards you actually see here. There isn't like a straight on mill strategy in this particular set, but there is some graveyard shenanigans that allow you to interact with your opponent's graveyards, like we saw a card a few moments ago. So I think really that's why this is here more than anything. Although in draft or sealed, 40 card decks, sometimes even a little bit of mill can create a clock and start to put a little pressure on your opponent. Not always bad to have, especially considering a lot of ways these are free rolls. This is another card also that's looking at how many creatures you have in play. Works really well with the mythic we just saw. Don't forget too, sometimes if it is relevant, this will allow you to mill yourself. Insufferable Siphon. This card, not a lot to say about it, but it's pretty good. Making an opponent discard a card of their choice. Yeah, better to have this than not have it. I'd be happy to play it. Top Secret Tunnel. This is another way to get that damage across. Critically important common. If you can pick one of these up, it's going to be really good for you. But whenever you crank this one, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So all those other abilities that these creatures could potentially have that do different things when they connect, could be pretty awesome. Twiddlestick Charger. And this is another way to help your stuff connect. Whenever you crank this, it gets to tap or untap target creature. I mean, there are going to be times when untapping could be relevant, but I think most of the time you're just going to tap something down to get your stuff across and get these extra abilities happening. Seager Base is the lone land that has a watermark, and it is the Sneak watermark. Kind of thought we'd see a cycle of these, one with each watermark, but it looks like they're trying to keep the color fixing in the set down to a minimum, which, I don't know, makes sense if they're trying to really kind of push you into factions, which feels like could be fun gameplay, so I'm okay with that. But I was a little surprised to see this was the only one. But there you go. It's fine for you, especially if you are running a lot of cards with this watermark. If you're not, at least it still taps for colorless mana. Or sometimes you can simply use this as well to splash cards with the Sneak watermark on it. With that being said, those are the cards for today. And tomorrow we're going to be back with part 3, where we're going to look at the League of Dastardly Doom. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.